from S&K Guide Service. And Steve, we were talking about doing videos and things like that on when you're doing your guide service, and you're also putting out your video for techniques and things like that. You're also in the process of finishing a book or writing a book. What's all that about?
Well, I'm working on it. But these TV shows and the radio shows have slowed down the progress a little bit. If it's real cold for the next couple months, we might get a lot more of it done. But I think it may end up having to wait until the following year to be finished. I have a couple of publishing companies that are contacting me regularly, but it's just not going to happen with everything we've got going.
I can attest to that because my producer, Mr. Haney, has been after me to finish up writing all the things that I've been writing. But as fishermen, we always seem to get waylaid. It's like, I'll go fishing today rather than sitting down and writing. And then when you come back, you go, you know what, I'm going to sit down here, relax a little bit because you've been fishing 12 hours and stuff like that. Steve, we were talking about learning different places along, you have your videos and stuff like that. But you mentioned to me that a number of your clients are tournament anglers or guys that want to start getting into the tournament thing, and why do they go out with you?
Well, what they like to do is a lot of guys. I had one guy just recently. He was doing well in a lot of his tournaments, but he was losing a lot of fish, and he was having trouble really landing them. He was getting them hooked, and they'd come off at the boat. So he spent the whole day with us, and we just basically watched his techniques and helped him land the fish, and he did really well. He ended up going down to his club's classic down in Kentucky, and he did really good. We have other guys that are just looking for spots, looking for maybe to see if we have something that they just haven't found yet, or maybe some way to refine a particular, even just a community hole. Sometimes there's a spot within a spot in the community holes that maybe they just didn't find. So
you know what? While you're mentioning that. Just define a community hole. A lot of people that maybe I know what it is, but tell our listeners and viewers what a community hole is.
A community hole is a place like Mattawoman Creek at the Point, at the Turner's Creek at the Point, and the Sassafras, and Lloyd's Creek in the spring. And the fall for both the largemouth and the stripers. It's a place where when you pull up, if you don't get there at 80 miles an hour in the morning, there's going to be about 30 boats there when you arrive.
But one of the things that like you had mentioned before was that even though there's boats there, you got to have the confidence in not only your techniques, but in knowing that area just a little bit better than the next guy and still fish with them guys.
Sure, we fished a couple places on the Sassafras in particular for a couple years, and there was always just 2 or 3 boats down in this one particular area, and we thought, whoa, what the heck are they doing down there? It's just some marsh reeds and there's no real cover. But when we got back in there on low tide with about 8 inches of water, you found the tomato barge, and you realized that they had been going up and down that the whole time, working that tomato barge, which is a real hot spot, and it wins tournaments. So, there's places within places. There's the sweet spots, and they're like that all over the Northeast, the Elk. They all have their sweet spots in there, even in community holes.
When you talk about the Elk River, where is that in location to the Susquehanna and stuff like that?
Well, a lot of your tournaments launch out of Havre de Grace at Tidings, which is over there by the Northeast. There's the Bohemia, the Northeast, the Elk, the Sassafras. They all come together right there on the Upper Bay, and they're all within about 20 or 30-minute ride of each other, depending how many big yachts you've got out that day and how much the wind is.
Right. Yeah. We're talking. We're talking about, this is Maryland that
right.
we're talking about.
Right.
So that people would understand it. Now that's the Susquehanna area. Now that's we're talking bass fishing, but you always give us some good reports on the striper fishing too. So you'll take out people in your guide service that say, "I just want to go striper fishing." Am I right?
We'll take them out if they want to go. We prefer largemouth bass, and we prefer smallmouth too. But we'll take them out, and there's times of the year in the spring and in November that you can go out even on the Sassafras. We caught a couple on the Sassafras there at Lloyd's that were pushing 30 and 32 inches, which that's not too bad for the Sassafras. Generally, they're out more on Turkey Point and, down further out in the bay by the bridges. But
now, the areas that you're mentioning, Turkey Point, Lloyd's, and stuff like that, are they on a map anywhere, or how would they people that our listeners or viewers would actually find if they wanted to go down there? I know a lot of tournaments are going down there, and they know Sassafras, they know the Elk, they know the Northeast. But where could they find a map that really points that out, or is there something that they should really look for?
Well, funny you should ask that, Bob, because there's 2 maps on my brand new article that's on Delaware Valley Outdoors website and on mine. And you can also go to my site and you just click on MapQuest. We have a free map service there. And you can click on the maps and you can just punch in the Sassafras River, the Potomac River, even specific spots on it. You can get a topographical and aeronautical map, anything you want, and just print it right out.
So that you can find those spots. Because one of the things that I find that a lot of anglers that they want to get into they go to fish a tournament, stuff like that, but they are intimidated by that water. We've always talked about safety, and when you just mentioned the wind as it's just the wind. When there's a wind down there, you got some problems. So you really have to know those kind of conditions, and you should have maps with you. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah. The Bassmaster Classic was held one time, and they launched out of Baltimore on the Upper Bay, and they fished up into the Sassafras in the Northeast, and you notice they never came back again. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for it. That's one of the roughest waters that there are besides the Great Lakes. The Chesapeake Bay, when you add in those yachts and you add in a 15, 20, or 25-mile-an-hour wind and 150 or 200 bass boats doing 70 to 80 miles an hour, you're rocking and rolling around out there in those waves. So,
and one of the things that you got to remember is that they call it the Susquehanna Flats for a certain reason. Am I correct?
That's right, because it's flat. Sometimes it's 6 inches deep if you run up on the wrong spot.
And again, that's where I think the maps and the knowledge of going out with a guide service like yourself to know that, because we just talk about it as running from here to there. It's not really running from here, because if you run from here to there, you ain't going to get there, if you know what I mean.
That's right.
You have to know where the channels are. And it's important to study those things. Am I correct?
Oh, it is. There's certain places where you have to run really close to the shoreline.
It's spooky, isn't it?
Right, and it looks like you should be out in the middle. You shouldn't be out in the middle. If you're out in the middle, you're going to end up blowing the lower unit and flying across the front of that boat out into the water. So you better have some good suspenders on.
Yeah, please trust me about that. Well, Steve, we'll be right back after this with more